Hello, my name is Olive, if you weren't aware. I Today I want to talk about something that I usually prefer to not talk about, that I don't ever want to talk about for my own sanity. Yeah, that's right. I want to talk about Panic at the Disco today. And I don't feel like I have to give the band any kind of introduction. I feel like we all know who Panic at the Disco is, okay? I was a huge Panic at the Disco fan when I was in middle school, okay? As we all were, okay? It happens. It's a phase. And some people, yeah, grow out of it, some people don't. Whatever, okay? Today, I really want to talk about a specific thing. I'm going to be telling you, the audience, kind of a general rundown of Panic at the Disco history, but more specifically, we're going to be focusing on the controversies of Panic at the Disco. Or, more specifically, I really want to talk about why are there still fans of Brendon Urie? Okay, that's what I want to know because this video might get a little controversial because guess what? I despise Brendon Urie. And if you've been on Twitter talking about emo bands or on Tumblr recently, you'll notice there's been sort of an influx of young Brendon Urie stans who will defend him no matter what. And I don't understand it. At first, I was just so confused. I was like, this isn't right. Like, he has controversies. I was like, who are you people? All this kind of stuff. But then I realized they're young fans. These are people who weren't around when all this controversial stuff happened, like I was. I remember exactly where I was when all these, well, you'll see what I mean when we talk about the more, I guess, recent stuff that happened that led to the band's eventual downfall. We'll get to it, okay? I remember exactly where I was when it all went down, and I remember I tore my Brendon Urie poster off the wall. I was like, this guy kind of stinks. And I want to help the young people who are just getting into these kinds of bands to understand why you should not have a Brendon Urie profile picture because I'm going to think that you're a weirdo if you do. Okay. And I don't care if it's a picture of him from 2005 or a picture of him from this year or something. Okay. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's talk about the controversies of Panic at the Disco as a whole, okay? Not just focusing on Brendon, okay? Just mainly going in depth there, I would say. And this slideshow is presented by Panicking Olive. That is me. Okay, so when you think about Panic at the Disco, you obviously you imagine Brendon first. You just imagine this guy. This picture is like their Spotify picture or whatever. It's it's like the cover of their album, the new album or whatever, the one that nobody listened to. And frankly, it's a terrible picture. It's like, why did they choose this picture? I don't know. Anyway, but we gotta take it back, okay? We gotta take it back to when Panic at the Disco was really more than one person, okay? Remember this era? Do you remember this? This is the era of Panic at the Disco I grew up with. And maybe, I don't know if that makes me seem really young or if that makes me seem really old because it seems like nowadays people are like, they just know Brendon, but like, if you're older, then I don't know. Anyway, but we gotta take it back even further than this, okay? We gotta go back again to this era. We gotta take it back to the OG timeline, okay? Back when there were four, like, concrete members of Panic at the Disco, and they were all just some random fucking guys from Las Vegas, okay? How did this happen? Let's find out. All right. So besties for the rest of time ish. Spencer Smith, right there, and George Ryan Ross the third over there. Okay. So they were kind of like high school best friends, buddies forever. And around like circa 1998, Ryan Ross was gifted a guitar for Christmas, and of course, he started to try and play songs and things. And conveniently, his friend Spencer was gifted a drum set for Christmas, and they were like, "Oh my god, like this is awesome!" Okay, and they also grew up in the suburbs of Las Vegas, which ends up, being a lot of writing material for Panic at the Disco. Cause what the heck? It's weird. Growing up in Vegas, yeah. So, along with some buddies they decided to form this little band called Pet Salamander. And this band was really just like Blink 182 covers and like things like that. But this was when Ryan decided to start trying original songwriting for like the first time. And yeah. And then, sorry, this picture makes me laugh. It's really low quality, but I can still tell like who is who. And I don't know, it's just really funny. They got another person involved in this little band situation, different from Pat Salamander. They got their friend Brent Wilson, who is the one with, I want to say, the white shirt and the khakis, but Ryan is wearing the exact same outfit. So, but he's that one, okay, the one on the end. But and they put together this little band they called Summer League, which I'm gonna be honest is such a lame band name, but I'll excuse it because they were very young. So Brent was on bass guitar, as you can see by that PNG. Spencer, obviously, on drums. And Ryan was singing. And this is when they kind of realized, like, wait, guys, we don't have anyone to play guitar because Ryan didn't feel the most confident about like singing and playing guitar at the time. So they were like, we just need another member. Just make like things easier, okay? And conveniently, oh my god, this is so perfect. Brent knew someone who was like in his music class. He's like, guys, I have the perfect person who can help us out. Yeah. That's right. It was Brendon Boyd Urie, who, okay, at the time, Ryan and Spencer were like, they had like just graduated high school, still very young. Um, Brendon, meanwhile, was still in high school, and he was also raised Mormon, so he was still Mormon at the time. Not that there's anything wrong with being Mormon, it's just a very interesting fact about him because you're like, oh, okay. That's why a lot of people connect him to, the modern day Benson Boone, you know, modern Brendan Urie, whatever, okay. This picture. God, okay. Anyway. Okay, so now that we have this current lineup of the four guys, they decided to choose the name Panic at the Disco. And this name actually comes from a song by the band Name Taken. And I listened to the song once and I forgot how it went and everything, but the lyrics Panic at the Disco are in it. And they were like, guys, it's a pretty good band name. And you know what? It is pretty good. It is pretty good. So, anyway, one day when they were just, having a little rehearsal, a little practice, a little get together. Let's say it's like circa 2004. Okay, I'm not sure exactly when, but this is how the story goes. Okay, Ryan was coming down with something and he couldn't really sing that day. He wasn't feeling that great. So he was like, I just don't think I can sing today, guys. But obviously they still need to practice, and Brendon had been practicing to be, the backup vocalist as well as the guitarist. So he was like, okay, like I'll just sing today, like you can play guitar so that way we can like still practice. Okay? Simple enough. And so Brendon sings and he's like, and everyone's like, "Oh my god. Brendon, like, I didn't know you could, like, actually sing like that. Like, I didn't know you were like a singer, you know? And he's like, yeah, guys. So from that moment forward, they just decided, well, we'll say that this was the beginning of Brennan's ego. I'll just say that, okay? You'll probably notice it more as we go along, but I wouldn't say this is a start. They decided Brendon would actually be the lead singer and that Ryan would play guitar and do backup vocals instead. Just like that. They just decided that. And, like, they all came to an agreement about it, so I'm sure it was fine. I can't help but wonder how different things would have been if Ryan was still the vocalist. Brendon is a very talented singer, and things probably just would have been a lot different, is all I have to say. You just have to wonder. But anyway, with the power of GarageBand, they made 3 demos that they were pretty thrilled about, okay? And those 3 demos were Kamisato, Nails for Breakfast, Tax for Snacks, and Time to Dance. They might sound familiar to you, if you know anything about them. So, yeah. And something about sorry, something about George Ryan Ross is that he was very active on things like LiveJournal and MySpace back in the day, as you can see by these images of him in his bathroom. He was posting stuff like My Chemical Romance makes me dance and just talking about like how he was I'll be honest, he was kind of an elitist about like MCR and Fall Out Boy. But like I mean if anyone had the right to, I guess it would be him. So, I mean, good enough for him. Else also used these platforms a lot to talk to other people about music and just like to be kind of a hoe, a MySpace hoe, a male MySpace hoe, I should say, was none other than Pete Wentz, of course. Duh. Everyone knows that. We've all seen the LiveJournal posts and stuff, of course. Ryan Ross had been posting about their demos, and guess who decided to take a listen to them? That's right, it was Pete Wentz. And we got this screenshot of this incredible moment. Pete Wentz saying, "Hey buddy from Panic at the Disco, what's your email address?" And Ryan saying, "Hey Pete, my email is blinkexists182 at AOL.com," which is a hilarious email address. And he was probably like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god." Cause like, oh my god, that's literally Pete Wentz. And obviously that's a very big deal. So, as the story goes, Pete took the boys to a Del Taco. And he was like, "Listen, guys, I want you to be the first ever band signed to my brand new record label, Decadence Records." And obviously, they're like, "Oh my god, yes!" Because, like, what? I mean, this is your first opportunity to get signed to a label, and it's Pete Wentz signing you, and it's his brand new record label, and you're gonna be the first. Yeah, I would say that's a huge deal. Okay, so they were very excited. And at the time, Brendon was still 17, so he actually had to get his like parents' signature like on the contract, which is kind of an interesting fact. So the band took a trip out to Maryland to a recording studio. And they didn't quite have the time and the money they were expecting to record their first album, but you know what? They made do. They were like, we're just gonna freaking do this. And in fact, they had to hire like a middle schooler to play cello for them on the album because they couldn't afford to hire like a professional musician. And that's just some random stock image of a girl playing the cello. So maybe that was her. I don't know. Maybe she looked like that. I don't know. But through this, they did end up releasing their first ever album, A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, which I have a poster of it right over there. Even though I'm not a Panic at the Disco fan anymore, yeah, I still turn on this album from time to time because, like, it's a killer debut and it's just, it's great. Okay, I can't lie, it's great. So this was released officially on September 27th, 2005. 2005 was a very exciting year to be emo. A lot of good stuff happening. And allegedly, from what I've heard on the internet, their first ever show, this might have been before their album was released, their first ever performance was them playing at Brendon's church. Oh, okay. Okay, so they were just I wonder what they chose to sing about. Like, were they singing about shotgun weddings or I don't know. But anyway, when they had to play at the church, they had to wear nice outfits. They had to wear like a suit and tie, at the very least a tie, you know. And that's kind of where they got the idea to like dress sort of fancy for all their shows. And you'll see that that's a recurring theme with like their costuming. And then all of a sudden, they were invited by Fall Out Boy, of course, to go with them on the Nintendo Fusion Tour in 2005, which is a big deal for a band that has literally just hit the scene, just released their first album, and they're playing with Boys Night Out, Motion City Soundtrack, The Starting Line, and the Fall Out Boy. And obviously, this had some people kind of like, how did this happen? They don't deserve to get all that success so quickly. It's just because they had Pete Wentz with them, and Pete Wentz, he was promoting the fuck out of them. You know, his Pete at the Disco shirt, he wanted people to know about this band, and it freaking worked, okay? And little known fun fact, if you've seen that Fall Out Boy interview, with the girl who's like, I love yaoi, you know, but only if it's manga and anime. If you've seen that, that girl, the yaoi girl, also did interview Panic at the Disco, but their interview was a lot more boring because they were kind of boring people back then. They were just like, yeah, to like all the questions, you know. And she was less crazy in that interview. I love her though. Love you, yaoi girl. Shout out. And then Panic at the Disco was able to go on their first ever headlining tour, and it was called the Nothing Rhymes with Circus Tour, which I love that title, and I love this poster, and it's truly glorious. Watch it on YouTube, guys. It's glorious. So this image, although I stretched it out and it's not in very good quality, is a good example of what the set might look like during a average Panic at the Disco performance at the time. Obviously very circus themed, and they had backup dancers and things like that. During their tour they actually got like professional like circus entertainers, who I would say professional lightly, who danced on stage with them, and they were great. They just made the whole thing so much better. And yeah, and there's you could see this giant platform behind Brendon here. It's kind of hard to see actually, but that's where the drums are, on top of this weird giant platform. They put Spencer all the way up there, which is crazy to me. And now there was some time like 2005 when they were doing a performance and people realized like, wait a minute, that's not Brent up there playing bass. Who the hell is that? And it was actually this fella named John Walker. Sorry, he's making a really strange face in that picture. It weirded me out. The story with Brent is that just apparently he was just like drinking too much and like showing up late for rehearsals or even performances. And there was this one performance that he was like a no show, and they were like, John, who was like some sort of technician for them, they were like, John, do you think you could fill in? And guess what? He did fill in. And they were just like, John, you're in. You're in. You're a much better choice than Brent is. So goodbye, Brent. And that is actually the first moment of many occasions of someone being kicked out of Panic at the Disco. Hmm. Hmm. So, after touring for A Fever You Can't Sweat Out was over, they decided they need to switch things up a lot. And to do this, they decided to go to a cabin in the middle of nowhere, like on a mountain, and just do a bunch of like psychedelics and stuff like that. And they wanted to write an album. in this cabin. In fact, things were changing so much. Ryan, for some reason, decided to burn his electric guitar, and he said that it was the end of the electric guitar era. He has since said that he kind of regrets burning it because it was a good guitar. Like, there just wasn't any reason to do that. And, like, yeah, but I mean, he was probably on something, so I guess it's a little excusable. A little. And so the album that they had come up with so far was called Cricket and Clover. But they were getting like legit cabin fever. They're going crazy. They're getting sick of each other. And this album, Cricket and Clover, they realized had just become way too ambitious and that it just wasn't going to happen. It was going to be like a concept album. It's going to have all these things. They were going to use non-traditional instruments. It just wasn't going to work out like that. But instead, we got this beauty. Pretty odd. And although I'm sure it's pretty different from what they originally had planned for Cricket and Clover, because it's less, story driven. Pretty Odd is a pretty good album. I really enjoy this album. There's a lot of nostalgia attached to this album for me, and I just love it so much. It's great. Okay, and she was officially released on March 25th, 2008. And the shocking thing about this situation is that I didn't really mention it before, but Panic at the Disco was spelled out with an exclamation point. It was Panic at the Disco, okay? And that was part of their brand almost. And then all of a sudden, Pretty Odd rolls around, the exclamation point is gone! And people were actually upset about this. There were fans who were like, I miss the exclamation point. Bring the exclamation point back. And Ryan said something up like, punctuation shouldn't matter to you this much. But that's what was happening. It was gone, okay? And to support this album, they got to go on the Honda Civic tour, and they did, in fact, make a pretty odd Honda Civic, as you can see in that picture. I drive a Honda Civic, and I wish this was the Honda Civic I was driving because it's honestly glorious, and it's was made like around the same time as my Honda Civic too. So, hey, if you own the pretty odd Honda Civic, sound off in the comments, okay? I want to know how it's doing. I want to know it's okay. And then a year later, while still touring and supporting Pretty Odd, they were in Cape Town, South Africa. It was the summer of 2009, and Panic at the Disco literally split in half. A moment of silence, please. The saddest part, nobody really knows exactly what happened. We can just say, though, artistic differences. Which, like, yeah, that's what every band says when they break up, unless there's something else, like, seriously something else going on. But we'll never know. We'll never know for sure because we weren't there. I wasn't there. I would love to be a fly on the wall. I want to know exactly what happened. But as a result of this, Ryan and John actually went off on their own project, which is so interesting because Panic at the Disco started with Ryan and Spencer. But Spencer, I guess you could, I don't want to say they were taking sides or anything, but it would seem that Spencer sided with Brendon and decided to stay with Panic at the Disco. And so instead, Ryan and John, they wanted to continue the sound that they were kind of doing and pretty odd. Very Beatles inspired stuff. Ryan is a huge fan of the Beatles. They created this band called the Young Banes. And actually, this was something I read about in an interview. Both Ryan and John were kind of surprised that Brendon and Spencer were still Panic at the Disco. Like they didn't split in two and then, start creating something else. They were still Panic at the Disco, which is kind of shocking. Mostly because, and I didn't mention this before, Ryan was the songwriter of the band. Okay, Brendon became the lead singer, but all the songs they had written, almost all were completely written by Ryan, which is really interesting. The first album was all about like Ryan's childhood and or about, just like problems he had had, like a girlfriend who cheated on him, stuff like that, and his dad, issues with his dad. So it feels really strange that Brendon is going to continue singing these songs, but, he has no connection to these songs. Like they weren't written about him, they're not about his life or anything. Okay. I mean, okay. All right. I mean, I just think it's a little strange, but like, of course they wanted to stay Panic at the Disco because Panic at the Disco was well known. They didn't want to start over. Ryan didn't care about the fame, okay? That's why he wanted to start a whole new thing. So, meanwhile, for Spencer and Brendon, they got the chance to make a song for this new movie with Megan Fox called Jennifer's Body. And we all know the song by now. It's New Perspective. It blew up on TikTok, and which kind of annoyed me because in my day, New Perspective was a serious Panic at the Disco deep cut. Nobody knew that song except for the real ones. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, Strawberry Lemon corrected. What are you saying? But that's not what this is about. That's not what this is about. The point is, they came back with this song after the split, and fans who were worried that, they were going to instantly sound like shit after two very important members left, were actually relieved because it is a good song. And they were like, oh, okay, maybe things won't be too different? Hmm. So obviously, they can't just be a band with the two of them now. I mean, obviously, they weren't the only ones working on the song, they were just the faces of Panic at the Disco at the moment. So clearly, they had to introduce some new members. So, first off, for a guitarist, they got Ian Crawford, who was formerly playing with The Cab, who was another band signed to Decadence Records, and you might know them from the song Angel with a Shotgun if you were on that side of the internet. Hey! So he became their guitarist. And they also introduced Dallin Weeks as their bassist, who was formerly of the band The Brobecks, which was his own band. And I'm trying not to show any favoritism because I mean I'll be honest, I had a big like Ryan Ross phase, I would say, where I was like so obsessed with him. But I got over it because I realized he was just some guy. Which I mean, these are all just some guys, so none of this matters. They're just like dudes. But I do I do really like Dallin, and I am a fan of Dallin. And I'm not biased. I'm trying not to be biased. I just like Dallin, okay? And if that's an issue, like, then maybe, I don't know, just click off the video, whatever, okay? So, with this new lineup, they created the album Vices and Virtues. And this album was a little bit more of a return to their sound from A Fever You Can't Sweat Out. It's not, I mean, Fever was a little more pop punk. Um, which is, very different from Pretty Odd, of course. And then this album, I don't really know how to describe it, but it's like they were trying to return to the sound of Fever, but without Ryan, obviously. So she was released on March 22nd, 2011, and guess what, guys? They brought the exclamation point back. They listened to the fans and they were like, you know what? You're right. The exclamation point is part of the brand. Okay. Okay. All right. And what's so interesting, little fun fact, is that Dallin Weeks actually created the concept for this album, like the album cover. You can see this is his drawing right here. Here, fiddle. There. Now you can see it better. He drew that. See this guy right here with like the mask on that you don't really notice because there's a lot of things going on in the picture and you're focused on Spencer and Brendon. That's Dallin under there. Yeah. Fun fact. So Dallin was not helping write the songs for the band at the time, but he was prominent member right away when he joined, okay? Now, the thing about writing the songs is I don't want to say that Brendon wasn't doing any writing, but there is definitely some ghostwriting going on. And it's pretty easy to tell. If you've been listening to a lot of Panic at the Disco, you could tell the difference between songs that were written by Ryan, Brendon, Dallin, or songs that were definitely ghost written by Pete Wentz. Okay? It becomes really obvious if you listen to a lot of Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco, which I have, and listening to Vices and Virtues, I'm like, Brendon did not write this. There's just no way because the songs that are written by him, I don't want to say he's a bad lyricist, but they're just kind of simple lyrics is what he's good at. He can write a good pop tune, okay? But the stuff that was on Vices and Virtues, I was like, this is some Pete Wentz stuff. And I know for a fact that one of the songs was completely taken from Pete Wentz's live journal because you can read the live journal post and there it is. If you've ever heard the song The Calendar, yeah, that was a Pete Wentz live journal post that a lot of people think, is probably about like Mike Urie. We're not discussing that in this video, maybe another video. But so, I mean, that's not a bad thing necessarily. I'm just saying like Brendon wasn't ready to write an album yet, okay? And they kind of got like a new aesthetic going on, of course. And, Brendon changed his hair, letting the forehead out now, and these god awful bow ties. Oh my god. Okay, sorry. I just not crazy about these outfits. I feel like they were trying too hard to be like Fever again, but like without the cool costumes. I don't know. Like they were like, let's wear suspenders. Eh, this is how I feel about it. Okay. So, not too long after they released this album, Ian was basically like, I want to pursue real music. I don't want to be in Panic at the Disco anymore because this is real music. And then I found out via his Wikipedia page that he later joined Never Shout Never. Like, okay, real music, okay. But then he got kicked out of Never Shout Never. He did play with the Academy Is, which is interesting, but just for one tour. And I guess now he has his own band. So, all right, man, whatever. Okay, whatever. And meanwhile, very sad actually, Spencer also left the band because he wanted to pursue getting sober because he was having an issue with alcohol and drugs at the time. And he just knew if he was in the band, like he wouldn't be able to focus on getting better. So, this is actually a very sad moment that Spencer had kind of had to leave the band on his own accord, of course. But people were really hoping that he would just like take a break and then come back to the band. But I'll tell you right now, unfortunately, he did not come back to the band. So, very sad. So now the lineup has changed again. And also, it's like a whole new era now, okay? Things are very different. As you can see by the ugly, disgusting bright gold jacket, okay? Things are different. Now we have a new character, and his name is Kenny Harris, and he became the guitarist of Panic at the Disco. And I'm obviously they had a drummer, but he wasn't like important enough to be in the photo shoots or anything. So it was just these three, okay? And this new guy, Kenny, I would keep an eye on him, guys, cuz let's just say we're going to have to talk about him more in a second, okay? So now that we got a whole new era and things are completely different, obviously we got to get a new album. And this new album is called Too Rare to Live, Too Rare to Die. And it's all about like Las Vegas life, basically, and like love and, things like that, okay? and she was released October 8th, 2013. And you can just tell it's 2013 by a lot of things, but like you can tell, like, okay, it's 2013. Yeah. Look at his hair, man. And also something about this album that I mean, I never knew when I was younger because why would I know this? But something I wish more people talked about. Brendon is the only person on the cover of this album, but he was not the only person in Panic at the Disco at the time. I mean, obviously they had other members, but Brendon wasn't even the primary songwriter at the time. I mean, obviously he was writing some things and he was singing and doing stuff or whatever, but he's the only one to feature on the album cover. But this was not when Brendon was like completely doing things on his own, like it was just Brendon at the Disco. It was not that yet. And yet, he is the only one on the album cover, which really bothers me, and I think that's just a moment of the ego, okay? And in fact, quite a lot of the songs on this album were actually completely written by Dallin Weeks, but he really doesn't get the credit for this album that he deserves. So let me just show you. All of these songs that are on this album, Dallin wrote. He wrote Colorful, Far Too Young to Die, Girl That You Love, Girls, Girls, Boys, which is an interesting topic because Brendon got a lot of credit for writing that song, and everyone, thinking like, "Oh my gosh, this is such like a accepting like LGBTQ song, like this is so great, like girls do love girls and boys." And Brendon claimed that he wrote the song about his first threesome. Okay. So, okay. And meanwhile, Dallin had originally written it to be about his now wife, who is bisexual. He's that guy with a bisexual wife. And he wrote that song, and then Brendon kind of made it about sex, and then everyone was like, oh, this is like an accepting song. Anyway, he also wrote Miss Jackson, Nicotine, This Is Gospel, and Vegas Lights. And I was very surprised to find out that he was actually the one who wrote This Is Gospel because Brendon always talked about, like, I swear to God, he said in an interview how This Is Gospel is about his relationship with Spencer because him and Spencer are okay, Spencer's the only one who's left Panic at the Disco who is still on really good terms with Brendon. They are like besties to the resty, okay? And the song, we all know the chorus, If You Love Me, Let Me Go. And it's about like Brendon having to let Spencer go so he could like get better, basically. But he didn't originally write the song, so I don't know. And now we gotta jump forward to a new era, okay? And this one, there's some changes again, okay? This album is called Death of a Bachelor, and not gonna lie, this one, it's a good fun time when you just like don't care and you just want to hear like something fun. It's a good fun time, okay? And it was released January 15th, 2016. So 2013 to 2016, that's a pretty big 2010s change, okay? And the thing about this album, Brendon made it completely solo. Huh? You say? You're confused. Oh yeah, cuz Dallin and this Kenny guy, they're still in the band, right? So why did he write it totally by himself? And the thing is, apparently Brendon decided to kind of demote Dallin and Kenny. I don't know how much Kenny was contributing in the first place, but he decided to kind of demote them to just being touring members of Panic at the Disco. So now Brendon is the only member of Panic at the Disco. He is the face of Panic at the Disco. And Dallin and Kenny, they're just some guys who play music with him. They're just people who go on stage with him. Which I could imagine would be kind of shocking, especially since, and I apologize for this crappy image, I got lazy. Because recently, not too long ago, Dallin talked about how, on TikTok, how when he was in Panic at the Disco, in between touring, he would have to work as like a carpet cleaner or someone who like goes to people's houses and like cleans out things if it's like flooded or something, like nasty stuff. He had to do that kind of work in between shows cuz I mean he like wasn't getting paid enough to be in Panic at the Disco at the time, which is crazy. And you want to know why? Cuz Death of a Bachelor was actually the most financially successful Panic at the Disco album by far. So, where was this money going, you know? I have a lot of questions about this, you know? And they were getting so mainstream and so popular and I mean, it's a pop album. They were mainstream. How could this have happened? Okay? So, unsurprisingly, Dallin Weeks decided that he was done with Panic at the Disco and that he did not need this anymore. And instead, actually, he had already been planning a side project called I Don't Know How But They Found Me, which was like a joke title because it was supposed to be like a secret. And then, like, if you found out about it, you're like, oh, I don't know how, but they found me. But then that just became like the band name. And it's sort of like a quote from Back to the Future or something. Anyway, Dallin had created his own band again with this guy named Ryan Seaman, who was a drummer, and this Ryan guy used to drum for Falling in Reverse, which should have been a big red flag, should have been Dallin's first warning, but we'll talk about them later. That's not important right now. But you know what is funny? If Brendon Urie had a quarter for every time someone left his band and started a new band with a guy named Ryan, he would have 2 quarters. Isn't that interesting? That happened twice, right? So now that Brendon is just the primary focus of Panic at the Disco, what is he gonna do now? Oh, okay. He'll make his Broadway debut. Okay. I just feel the need to mention this real quick. Yes, Brendon Urie was in Kinky Boots. If you've ever seen a clip of him on stage during the song Don't Threaten Me with a Good Time, you're probably like, oh, okay, yeah, they would put him in that. Because what is he doing? Clearly, he wants to be in high heels. And this image is terrifying to me because his face especially is what really upsets me. The whole thing is upsetting, but especially his face. So I don't want to talk about it anymore. Let's move on. So now this image that you see right here, this became Panic at the Disco. It's Brendon and some people who are just playing instruments. But what's interesting is that they actually introduced the first ever female member of Panic at the Disco, and her name is Nicole Rowe. And she's not really important in this slideshow, but I just wanted to mention that I thought it was cool, kind of cool that like a woman was in Panic at the Disco. So it's cool. And now Brendon has decided, of course, to make another album. And this one is another pop album. And it's one that we all know whether we want to or not. And it is Pray for the Wicked. And I remember where I was when this album dropped. And I did, in fact, see him on the Pray for the Wicked tour. And yeah, but I was a child, so whatever. And it came out June 22nd, 2018. Guys, 2018 was a wild time to be emo. I'll just say that. Anyway, the thing about this album is that it was very mainstream successful. It was going up on the charts. It was surpassing other older Panic at the Disco songs. Like 9 in the Afternoon had reached pretty high on the Billboard, and so had I Write Sins Not Tragedies, that was like their like most popular song like for the longest time. And then all of a sudden the song from this album, like Hey Look Ma, I Made It, was trending. And High Hopes. That's right, everybody. It's that song that you hear literally everywhere, even though you never, ever, ever want to be hearing it. It is everywhere, unfortunately. So, now, you remember when I said we should watch out for that Kenny fellow? Yeah, I don't have a fun animation or anything because I don't want to joke about this, but this Kenny guy was exposed for trying to use what fame he had to talk to underage Panic at the Disco fans, primarily 16-year-old girls. And he got exposed for this, of course. And it became a pretty big deal. It was a big controversy, or at least from what I remember, because I remember this and I was like, oh my god, like, who even is this guy? And to the credit of the rest of Panic at the Disco, they took immediate action. And Kenny was kicked out of the band. They decided he would no longer be performing with them. And that was that. And I have to say, they did they did the right thing here, definitely. And this was just the right thing to do in that situation, but it was just something I wanted to talk about because like remember when there was that weird guy, Panic at the Disco? And apparently this guy has a wife and kids. So just incredibly disgusting. I don't know what he's up to now. I hope we never find out, okay? Now we gotta talk about something else. This was the bigger controversy that I remember happening, and this was sort of the catalyst to me tearing down my Brendon Urie poster. So, who the fuck is Zach Hall? If you're not aware, Zach Hall is a security guard who has been working with Panic at the Disco from the very beginning. As you can see in this picture of Zach and Brendon from a long time ago, and then a very more recent picture of them. He has been working with them for a very long time. He was a very close friend of Brendon Urie. Now, why are we talking about this guy, Zach Hall? Well, he kind of became well known, like, in the fandom because he was just, like, associated with Panic at the Disco so much. I mean, it just makes sense. Like, sometimes the crew also gets, like, a fan base, which, cool. The thing is, somebody asked Dallin Weeks on his Instagram story, what's your opinion on Zach Hall? And I kind of love that Dallin has like no filter and he'll just say what's on his mind. He said, the actual worst person I've ever met about Zach. Oh, oh. And I remember thinking, why? Why, pray tell? Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot. In fact, I found this helpful card all about it. And I'm not going to go through every single thing that I found on this card, but I am going to link it in the description if you want to read all of it yourself. But basically, he has made a lot of really disgusting jokes and tweets about things that have to deal with fat phobia, lesbophobia, just in general homophobia. Pedi- I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that word on YouTube. I don't know what the deal is, but some nasty stuff about underage people, being ableist, and just in general a very misogynistic man, just like in general. And there's quite a few moments on here, and it's bad. It's some bad stuff, okay? And it gets so much worse than that, actually. If just, making some bad jokes was already terrible, it just gets so much worse because then once people start talking about how terrible he is, a lot of young Panic at the Disco fans came forward about how he had low key or high key, in some cases, been sexually harassed by Zach Hall, and that they had just been very uncomfortable anytime they're around him. And one of the people who spoke up about being harassed by Zach was actually Breezy Weeks, who is Dallin Weeks' wife. And she chose not to speak up about Zach being a gross person because she didn't want to jeopardize Dallin's job because he was providing being a Panic at the Disco was providing for like his wife and kids. Um but obviously after Dallin left and was doing his own thing, she was like, "Yeah, okay, this needs to be talked about, okay?" So it was some bad stuff, okay? And people were getting this trending on Twitter. Hashtag fire Zach Hall was trending on Twitter. People were like, this needs to be talked about. Dallin needs to say something about this because not only has this been someone he's worked with for like over a decade at this point, this was a very close friend of his. So people were like, Brendon, what do you have to say? And what he did have to say, a lot of people were disappointed by. He posted a statement and it said this: "I want to say I'm truly sorry for anyone who's been hurt by this directly or has been made to feel unheard. The safety of our fans is a priority, and I do not take that lightly, because the last thing I want is for everyone to feel unsafe when they're coming to see Panic at the Disco. So, moving forward, we'll also be holding mandatory anti harassment training sessions for anybody who works for the band." Oh my gosh, an HR meeting. Oh my gosh, that's gonna save everything. And that being said, Zach is still my friend. You know, I've seen him grow so much over the last several years, and I do believe in second chances. And though I don't see him ever interacting with fans again, I'm not just going to shut the door on him forever or stop being his friend. And again, part of the reason I've been keeping to myself is because I've just had a lot to learn, dude. Wow. What a great thing to say. This was very disappointing to hear for a lot of reasons. Mainly that he believes in second chances, so he's just gonna he's just gonna still be his friend. Okay, great. Now, this situation brought up a lot of things about Brendon as well. And some stuff that when I was younger and all this was happening, I had never heard of any of this, and this was incredibly shocking. So, I'm not going to show you every single one of these videos because some of them make me very uncomfortable and I just would rather not have it on my own YouTube page. So I'm going to link all of these videos in the description, but the first video here is a video of Brendon saying the N-word, and it's a bad video. It's him like rapping along to some song and he quite literally doesn't even hesitate to say it. And the weird part is he's like mumbling a lot of the lyrics of the song, but the N word is like the only word that's like completely clear in like what he's mumbling. And also, he was a fully grown man. This was not like an old video or anything. This was like his Vine era. That's kind of when it was from. So, really bad look, okay? The next video on here is Brendon making a pretty distasteful joke that involved the N word. Not saying it, but still very distasteful. And I will include this clip. And of course, he's with Zach Hall in the video. Oh my god.
I want to get a license plate that says NGR LVR. When you're looking at that license plate, you're like, well, you can't. Wait, but he loves them, so I don't. You can't be mad. I don't know if I should be mad. NGR LVR.
The next video is an older video, and it's from like around 2011. And he is definitely intoxicated in the video, so I'll give him that slightest benefit of the doubt. But it's him on stage just saying some very disgusting things to the fans. And listen, some inappropriate things. Listen, I'm like a big My Chemical Romance fan, okay? That's pretty obvious. And Gerard Way says some crazy stuff on stage. But you know what he's never done? He's never said he was going to do something unconsensual to the fans and the audience, which is that's just like, whoa, you're taking it a step too far, okay? Saying weird, crazy sexual stuff on stage is obviously fine, you know? Gerard says some crazy stuff all the time, but what Brendon is saying in this video is just simply not okay. It's very it makes me really uncomfortable to watch that video. And then the last video, which I'll include a little bit of, is well, I was trying to find the video of him apologizing for the N word video, which I was not able to find. I swear there was an apology at one point, but could not find it. So if anyone could like link me to that video or something, I would really appreciate it. Um, Instead, I found a video of him apologizing for using the T slur, it's just a slur against transgender people. And I was like, what? I didn't even know about that. And I mean, to be fair, in the video, he does seem really sorry. And he was like, oh, I was quoting someone else. But why would he ever think it's okay to say the word in the first place? I don't know. You're a grown man. You should know better.
No, I wasn't saying it. I was quoting somebody else that had said this to me. Literally, somebody had said this transphobic slur to me during an interview, and obviously the interview never came out because their people probably said the same thing. Like, that's not a very good word to say. So right now, I'm just going to say it. I am so deeply sorry. I felt sick to my stomach when I realized how hurtful that word is. And my ignorance is no excuse. There's just no excuse. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I said it. Even if I'm retelling it, it's like even if I retold a story, I wouldn't drop an N bomb. You know what I'm saying? I treat the word the same. So here and now, I can't fully express how deeply sickened I was to learn this and to know how awful that word is to many of you. And I am just incredibly sorry. There's just no excuse for me. So all I can say is I'm sorry. And moving forward, not a good word to use ever. Not okay. It's not passable. It's not okay to just be like, oh, it's fine. He just said it telling a story. It's not okay. Even me telling a story is no excuse for using that word. So I am so incredibly, deeply sorry about using that. Even in the context I did, just no excuse. And I am always going to try to improve and get better, but that's still no rationalization for using that word. There's no reason to do it. So again, I'm sorry. I'm incredibly sorry for doing that. It will live on in the podcast, even me retelling the thing, but at least it's a reminder of like never to fucking do that ever again. So to the trans community, I'm so deeply sorry. To everyone, honestly, but mostly to all of you. I'm incredibly sorry. So, it needed to be talked about. And thank you for reminding me, by the way. Maria L, thank you for the bits, but I'm just sorry, dude. I'm just, I feel like literally my stomach felt sick. I felt nauseous, and I can't even imagine how some of you felt being offended by that word, you know? Yeah, it's just not okay. So again, I hope that this is enough of me to say I am sorry, and moving forward, know that I will not be using that word ever again. It's not okay. It's just not okay. So that one's struck from my vocabulary. That word is just bull crap, and I'm not going to use it again, okay? Thank you guys for being so understanding and loving and kind. I really do appreciate you.
And although there's not concrete proof of this, some other allegations kind of rose up about him, about involving um other like girl Panic at the Disco fans. However, these have never been officially confirmed. A lot of people say they're just not true at all. I just wanted to discuss that was a thing, okay? So, yeah, not I mean a lot all these things though, not a good look, okay? And yet, despite it all, despite Panic at the Disco literally losing so many fans when this happened, Brendon released another album, Viva Las Vengeance. Of course, it's got him on the album cover, of course. Oh my god. And this album was released August 19th, 2022. And I've still yet to listen to the thing in its entirety because I do not want to, and also anything I've heard from it sounds awful. And the thing about this album is that it's just a dupe. It's a ripoff of Too Where to Live, Too Where to Die. It's like about living in the suburbs of Vegas and stuff. It's like, okay, you already wrote an album about that, and sure, Dallin wrote most of it, but like, that album's so much better. This, what? You've already written about this. I don't know, it's stupid. And the only thing that I want to mention from this album, from this era of Panic at the Disco, is that one of the songs off of this album, Local God, it has some crazy lyrics, and I suggest you listen to it for yourself. But basically the lyrics are just blatantly talking about Ryan Ross, which I think is kind of weird to write a very obvious song about someone who you are not friends with and have not been. I mean, they're civil, but they haven't been friends in a really long time. It's about like them and like the start of like Panic at the Disco, but it's very obviously about Ryan a lot. You know, in 1998, you bought a BC Rich, you were a master shredder from the jump. You had so many you had so many chances to become a star, but you never really cared about them. Local God, you'll live forever as a local god. We signed a record deal at 17, hated by every local band. They say we never paid our dues, but what does that mean? Blah blah blah. What why did he write this? Like this is just kind of crazy to me, okay? So quick mention of that. And now we are brought to the section where we must discuss the beginning of the end of Panic at the Disco. The way it happened, it was just so simple. Pete Wentz posted a picture on Instagram. That is literally all that happened to get the ball rolling, okay? And it's just a picture of him like in his kitchen, like baking cookies or something. It's deleted. It's deleted now, but people are investigators and they want to zoom in on every little thing about Pete Wentz's kitchen. First off, you can see like all of his security cameras just right there in the middle of his kitchen, which is kind of hilarious. People were probably trying to see inside of his cabinet or something, but you can see on that one cabinet there seems to be some like invites to like weddings or something. And so people were probably like, "Oh my god, like who's getting married or like what's going on?" And they noticed this particular postcard looks a hell of a lot like Brendon and his wife, Sarah, who, in this image, appears to be pregnant. It appears to be a pregnancy photo. And what? Everyone's like, what? They're pregnant? How could this have happened? And they were not ready to announce that yet, obviously. So Pete had to delete the image quickly. And as a result of this, after actually during the tour for Viva Las Vengeance, Brendon, I want to say Panic at the Disco, but it was just Brendon, obviously, made this big long announcement about how Panic at the Disco was officially over and officially ending because he is having a child and he's a family man now because he doesn't need Panic at the Disco anymore. It's just going, I mean, it was going down the drain anyway, so that's what he wanted to do. So this post came on January 24th, 2023. This marked the end of Panic. RIP, rest in piss. And I'm not going to read this whole thing to you because honestly, just find it on their Instagram. And the funny thing about this is that Pete Wentz was the start of Panic at the Disco, and then he somehow became the end of Panic at the Disco. Pete Wentz giveth, and Pete Wentz taketh away. And I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I suggest you go to the Instagram post yourself and read some of the comments because honestly, some of them are hilarious. The most recent ones are just people being like, oh, please come back. But there's funny ones from when it was originally posted, and they're saying stuff like, RIP, bozo. Thank God. Finally, you just had to drag the Panic at the Disco name through the mud with those last few albums, huh? El Bozo. Took you long enough. RIP. So sad. Rest in piss. So, all of this to say, I believe the reason that there are still people who are supporting Brendon Urie and who really, really like him as a person, the conclusion here is that those people are either just completely ignorant to all of this stuff or they're just stupid. So, I can't tell who is who. So, I'm making this video just so I can inform people. Okay? Want you to know. You shouldn't probably make Brendon your profile picture cuz then I might assume you're racist. Okay? And yeah, that's it. That's the whole conclusion. That's the whole story. So, but there's a little bonus section, okay? Now I want to talk about where are they now with these band members. So, what happened everyone? So Spencer, he is married. I don't know if he has kids. I couldn't figure that out. And he is now a talent agent at Decadence Records, which the name changed to DCD2. At the most recent ever Panic at the Disco show, which we'll talk about in a second, Spencer actually did come out and play drums for the show. So that's pretty cool. It's cool that he's still drumming and stuff and that he's still working in the music industry. So I'm happy for him. Meanwhile, Brent Wilson got arrested. He got arrested in 2021 because he had an unauthorized weapon and drugs on him. And I don't know how much time he served exactly, but now apparently he is a personal trainer, and this is what his Instagram looks like. And it's weird and scary. He got really ripped, and it's like terrifying. So, all right, well, no one remembers him anyway. So, now what about John and Ryan? What are they up to? So, John, they were in the young veins for a few years, just like playing music and whatever. And then they kind of decided to like kind of do their own things and just like be more like just be chill. Like I don't know. So they did remaster their only album, Take a Vacation, which is cool. And John just kind of like chills with like his wife and kids and occasionally plays music and posts on Instagram sometimes, and right now he is touring with The Academy Is for their comeback tour, which is cool, but that's kind of all he's up to. Meanwhile, Ryan did some solo stuff and he did some music with his friend Z Berg, who like has this whole thing where she like pretends to be dead, and I think they pretended to get married or something. It's like a whole thing, but that's cool. And then Ryan, he kind of altogether dropped off the face of the planet, which is completely understandable. I'm not gonna go too in depth, but if you know the catfishing story, I didn't want to talk about that this slideshow because I whatever. Ryan dropped off the face of the world, doesn't use internet at all, and or at least social media. And now every time like a new picture of Ryan like graces the timeline or gets posted somewhere, everyone's like, "Oh my god, guys, like Jesus was seen." So the most recent pictures of Ryan at the moment are these two pictures of him just wearing like denim. And that's it. That's it for him. Now, what about Dallin Weeks and that other guy, Ryan? Like, what have they been up to? So, I don't know how released their first album, Razzmatazz, and it's pretty great. It's pretty awesome. And then, something interesting, Ryan Seaman stole a bunch of money from Dallin and equipment. So, well, according the craziest thing about all this, I said he was previously in Falling in Reverse. The one who brought this all to light was actually Ronnie Radke, which is like okay. Ryan stole $26,000 from him, and he got kicked out of I don't know how because of it, obviously. And he's also like MAGA now, so just some bad luck for Dallin there. Just some more bad luck for him. But he's got another album now, Gloom Division, and it's great. And I saw him on tour, and it was great. And actually, I even got to meet Dallin. So yeah, he was really nice, and he signed a teddy bear for me. And yeah, and I look crazy in the picture, but that's pretty cool. And what's even cooler is that Dallin Weeks and Ryan Ross actually played a show together. And that's pretty cool because like those are the guys that like those are the cool guys from Panic at the Disco. They were the ones writing the cool stuff, but they never got to be in the band at the same time. So it's pretty cool. Okay, now let's talk about Brendon and what the current state of Panic at the Disco is. So even though the band is dead and quote unquote broken up, just one person, but it was broken up, Panic at the Disco decided to come back for When We Were Young Fest 2025 as a headliner and just perform all of A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, which is like, oh, okay. This is random. Just gonna come back. Okay. Anyway. And it was the original touring members from when they last played, and with the addition of Spencer. Spencer did come for When We Were Young Fest, which is cool. But what's disappointing is that because of this, people found out Zach Hall is still working with Panic at the Disco, which is very disappointing. I mean, if you're a current fan and you know about all the Zach Hall stuff, you should be very upset about that. So, yeah, that's I don't want to associate with this band ever. And they did recently do like big stuff for the Fever You Can't Sweat Out 20th anniversary. Um, that all happened after I made this slideshow. Actually, I made this slideshow based off of an essay I wrote in high school. My final essay was about Panic at the Disco. It did not talk about that. Um, Obviously, I just this is all recent stuff I added. Did not get to talk about like the live in Denver stuff, whatever. But that's kind of all that's been going on for Panic at the Disco. And Brendon was actually last, cited like just like playing at like somebody's wedding or something like that, which is okay. Like he's just some guy now. He's not really even a celebrity. He's just some guy who has a mustache now, I guess. And kind of a mullet. Okay, whatever. And that's kind of everything. That's the state of Panic at the Disco. That is why you should not be a fan. Like, you can listen to the music, obviously. I don't care. But you shouldn't be a fan of Brendon Urie, okay? Just just think a little before you just start making a Stan account, okay? And that's all. That's all I gotta say. I hope you have a wonderful day, despite all the things I might have said about your fave. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I love you all. Bye.